What's happening, YouTube? It's your homie S.Akuma coming back to you with another video. And today I am very excited to announce, if you haven't seen already, through the Transformers Facebook page, that we are finally getting Transformers Tcg organized play. So what that means is, with organized play, there'll be sanctioned events, so there'll be official events held by the WOTC, and if you place well, like, you know, getting into top 32 and further, the better you do, the more prizes you win. There are cash prizes, like I think first place for the tournament happened at the Origins Game Fair is $1,500, and then second place is $1,000. Third and fourth is $750, and then it trickles down from there. And then all these tournaments, this tournament, and then a tournament as well that'll be happening at Gen Con this year in Indianapolis, Indiana, will determine who can get invites to the Energon Invitational held in at PAX Unplugged. And then there will also be in-store events that happen, I think between, let me see, in-store events that will happen between July 1st and September 30th. So in between that time, if your store is has the kit for these new set that's coming out for Wave 3, Siege 1, they will also hold a possible small, a sanctioned tournament, and the winner of that tournament will also get an invitation to PAX Unplugged. So if you're not able to travel to Ohio or to Indianapolis for those two events prior to PAX Unplugged, then you'll be able to at least get in with your home store. So hopefully you have a store around, near you that is promoting the sneak preview for the set. And the set, by the way, is released June 28th. And so with that being said, the main thing I want to talk about with this video, like I said, I will post, or if I didn't say it before, but I will post a link to the information that WOTC has provided, and about all of the events and everything that's going on with the prize breakdown. But the meat of this video is to talk about side decking, and that's the thing I'm most excited about. That's something I was looking forward to since I first started the game, and finally here, and it came quicker than I expected. So I'm very happy to see about that. That brings another skill intensive part to the game, and that's what I'm looking for, trying to get the most competitive I can get out of this game. And so yeah, very excited for that. And so we'll jump right into it. Alright, so first things first, let's talk about side decking in general and what is it. So for this game specifically, how side decking is going to work: you can have one character card of 20 stars or fewer and 10 battle cards. After sideboarding, decks must be legal. After each game in a match, the player who won that game sideboards first and declares their team. Then the player who lost that game sideboards and declares their team. No more than 3 copies of each battle card are allowed between a player's deck and sideboard, and duplicate characters are not allowed between players' decks and sideboards. Let's talk about side decking here. What exactly is side decking? I want to talk about it in the most basic form, and then we'll get into how WOTC is doing rules for the Transformers side decking, and go on from there. So side decking, essentially, all it is you have your 40-card main deck that you've always had, your 40-card main deck of battle cards, and then you have a series of cards outside of your main deck that can consist of at least 10 cards. I want to say it has to be 10 cards. It didn't say that it can be between 1 and 10. I'm pretty sure the Transformers, WOTC will make that very clear within the coming days with exactly how everything is going to work. But all it is it's another 10 cards that are outside of your main deck that you are able to put cards into your main deck between game 2 and 3 that can help you out with a certain matchup. As long as you have the same number of cards in your side deck that you do in your main deck when you start game 2 and then when you start game 3, it's all legal. Now, with Transformers has added is you're also able to side deck a character. Now, normally with these games, like in Yu-Gi-Oh, you had a 40-card minimum deck and you were able to side 15 cards. In the Magic the Gathering game, which is also a game created by WOTC, they have a 60-card minimum main deck and then also a 15-card side deck, or sideboard, whichever you want to call it. So with this game, you're able to only side 10, but you're also able to actually side deck a character that has 20 stars or less. So what that means is you pretty much can't side Metroplex, or you can't, yeah, that's really the only character. Or well, I guess you could side what's that guy's name? You could side Omega Supreme, but why would you? I don't think you'd actually do that, but yeah. You could side Omega Supreme. Alright, so here's an example of side decking a character and some things you can do with it. Some things can get, actually, it can get pretty tricky and very skill intensive just in building your deck. Now building your deck takes more thought than just throwing cards together and seeing if they work or not, because now you also have a sideboard that will help you out as well. Now this example won't be the best example because you won't necessarily side deck the character I'm about to show you into this deck, but it's just an example to give you an idea, and you can just run wild with it because there are so many different ways to tweak it and do things with your deck. And then of course, you know, keep in mind your side deck will let you be able to side deck cards that you were normally main decking, you know, that you don't have to anymore. So here's a good example here of, you know, so here's the Optimus Hot Rod and Flame War deck, and this equals 25 stars. So with the new side decking rules of the Transformers Tcg, what happens is, if I win game one, excuse me, the player that wins game one has to side deck first, and then they have to present their deck and their characters before the opponent's side deck. So what that does is that lets the loser of the game possibly try to counter the winner, you know, the winner of game one in the best way they can. So for example, let's say I side deck a Hot Rod out for 7 stars for Warpath. Now Warpath has some relevance in this meta, him and also Acid Storm, who I don't have on hand. But yeah, so now I'm at 24 stars. Now also with that 24 stars, I can also side in a star card. So I can specifically side in cards like you know, Vandalize, or I can side in, you know, Leap of Faith, because now I have the space, and so whatever you probably only side deck one side card and use the other 9 spaces for more valuable cards, but you can also side deck Bolt of Lightning or whatever. The point is, the fact that you'll still equal 25 stars at the end is all that matters. So when you do side deck, I'm not 100% sure that you have to show your opponent the cards that you side deck in, the battle cards, and that'll be something that I'm sure they'll clarify soon. But if you don't have to do that, I'm sure you at least have to reveal your battle cards with stars, so you can show that you're, hey, you know, let your opponent know you're still equaling 25 stars and you're playing this battle card. So I think that'll be a question that, if that's not asked soon, I will make sure I ask it to the WTC staff and clarify that. But that's just one example that you can use, you know, against a deck that's using tough like tanks or the mirror match, or actually that'd be really good, the mirror match or aerial bots. You can easily use this, and then you could flip, you know, Warpath, and then now your opponent's tough is turned off. So, and also with obviously with Acid Storm, I see, you know, a lot more bold decks coming out, like the Fire Cons and things like that. So if bold actually ends up trying to take over again, Acid Storm will be a great side deck card, which means he'll actually go up in value. So if you haven't picked you up an Acid Storm, I would pick him up. I would pick you up a Warpath just in case it becomes relevant for what I'm talking about, you know, to turn off your opponent's bold or turn off their tough, and continue from there. Okay, so in this segment of the video, I just wanted to talk about side decking again, and just a quick reminder, remember you have your 10 card side deck and your 40 card main deck, and you can take 2 cards out of your side deck and put it into your main deck, and then as long as you take out 2 cards from your main deck and put them back into your side deck, and so you still have 40 and 10, it's legal. So that's all that really is. And again, your side deck is just cards that'll help you in certain matchups. And for example, like the card you see here, Force Field, I think this would be a great card to side deck. Let's, you know, talk about me from the Sentinel standpoint. Example of a side deck that I would use, and this is just off the top of the dome that I was thinking of before I made the video. I got some cards together. Force Field would be a great card to side deck against other aggro matchups. And the really big mind trick here is, right off the bat, well, maybe not after seeing this video, but but right off the bat, you see, this is what makes me so excited about the mind games. Like, if you're playing bashing shields in your deck, you'll probably take them, first glance, take them all out, because you really almost never want to activate a bashing shield. In game one, you activated them because it was your only upgrade, and sure, it gave you +1 defense. But now you know 100% that you're playing against an aggro matchup, so game two, you might side out all of your bashing shields because they're not good. And then I not counter that, but I, on the other hand, put in, take out my bashing shields as well, but I add force fields. So now when I have a force field out, it'll stick. Unless you have ramming speed or vaporize, or you actually did keep in the bashing shield, my force field sticks and it becomes a lot more valuable. So, you know, now that you're seeing this, you might want to at least keep in 1 bashing shield just in case your opponent's thinking about something like what I'm talking about. So this is something that'll be a very big mind game. This will be a very big mind game when it comes to side decking. So that's an example. Another example is like cards like ramming speed. I don't think ramming speed is good in the main deck right now. There's nothing you want to destroy. Maybe in the mirror match. The only time that there's not even necessarily in the mirror match. In aggro versus aggro matchups, the only card that really you want to destroy is like an armor, like a force field if they have it, or late game, possibly destroy one of their weapons after your Prowler's already killed a weapon, or whatever matchup you're playing. You know, you can kind of use this in any aggro matchup. Same with force field. You really only want to use this late game. You only care about Starscream Security Console or the mining pick in that matchup. But especially in this area, that deck isn't big right now, so ramming speed honestly is just a lot worse right now. But this is another example. Like, you can play this versus possibly aerial bots, because and try to get rid of their armors at every cost. Now, of course, you can just easily just play inside in your third Bashing Shield if you're not already main decking 3, or if you're main decking 1, you can possibly take out you can possibly add 2 more of these in, or whatever, however you construct your side deck. Now, on the flip side, also in your main deck, in your meta, if you're in a orange heavy meta, you can easily side deck 2 of these and only main deck 1 and have space for other cards in your main deck. That's another thing. You can easily just put this in when you play against an aggro a defensive matchup like aerial bots or the Optimus deck. And then I have 2 other cards. Now, there really aren't any good defensive full-on Decepticon decks right now, but if one were to ever become relevant that is super defensive and is hard to break through because they got all this tough, let's say like tanks become super competitive, you can side deck these in if you're playing Autobots and at least get that Pierce 2 and get through their armors or whatever the case is throughout the matchup. And of course, if you're playing an all Decepticon deck and you play against aerial bots or something like that, you can side deck in 2 to 3 Scoundrels Blasters, so you at least have that guaranteed weapon that will get some type of damage in. Because if you're also let's say you're playing a blue heavy deck yourself, it's going to be hard for you guys to get damage in. So you can easily side deck a card in like this to at least get some type of damage in. And then last but not least, my 10th card is just a Matrix of Leadership. It's not good in the main deck right now, maybe as a one-of if I were to play it, but it's only really good or relevant rather against defensive matchups. And the only 2 decks right now are aerial bots and the Optimus Hot Rod / Sunstreaker and Flame War deck to at least get that Pierce 1 if nothing else. And even then, that's not necessarily always relevant, but this is just an example. These are the only cards I could think of at the time. Of course, we also have our star cards here. We have Bolt of Lightning, Vandalize, Leap of Faith, and things like that. Okay, so I had a example that I thought was going to work, but then I realized that you can't side deck in the same characters. As in, I had a idea to possibly change into blue Sentinels, and what I meant by is like take out your improvised shields for handheld blasters, take out your Peace Through Tyrannies for security checkpoints, take out your reckless charges for leap into battle possibly, and then take out another card for an Enigma to focus on trying to combine. Now, I'm not saying that's good, but just that idea that I'm showing you here, I can see people coming up with crazy ideas of converting into another form of their deck. Now, again, with this deck, you're not able to do that because I can't side it, because I obviously want the tough guys more than the bold guys when I switch my characters. Now, with the math, I can look at my deck, but I think if I were to trade in 9 blue cards to my main deck, I think I have 4 or 5 blue cards now, so I'd have about, 13 or 14 blues now. So would it really be all that beneficial to switch that? I don't know. It'd be something I literally have to just put together, throw together, and test and see what happens. But you could possibly side deck against other like defensive decks, or side it against aerial bots, because when you get out Maximus is good against the aerial bot deck if you can get him out. But yeah, that was just a wacky idea that I had, but I don't think it's going to work, because I have to have a Sunstreaker and a Hot Rod, or at least one or the other, from outside of the game to be able to trade with the Prowl. And with the rules, I'm kind of betting that you won't be able to do that, because you technically have a Sunstreaker in your scrap pile. But maybe it will work. Maybe I can actually physically take a Sunstreaker character as a character card that I'm playing up front, and but then I guess you can't have another Sunstreaker in the in your KO area. So ideally, you'd have to like switch 2 bots. Now, again, that was just an idea that I had. It probably won't work, but just to clarify, I just want to make sure. But that would be pretty cool. So that would be something to look forward to. People side decking from heavy orange to heavy blue and getting more defensive, depending on the matchup or whatever the case is, or just to throw your opponent off, based off of what they're side decking. You could do things like that. And of course, we can't forget about our direct damage. There's also an option to side deck 10 direct damage cards. You can side in 3 one-shot stand, 3 plasma burst, and 3 zap. And now I'm not saying that's necessarily the correct way to do it, but you can side in some possible direct damage, because Insecticons are very weak to direct damage. So where direct damage wouldn't be as good in other matchups, you could side deck against your Insecticons and possibly have an easier matchup against them. All right, so also a quick side note, something else that that is very relevant when it comes to side decking. Metroplex and combiners will not, or excuse me, at least combiner teams with the Enigma in general, like Predacons, the aerial bots, all of those decks won't be able to side deck into other characters because that'll just throw off the entire deck. The aerial bots can't trade, you know, Silverbolt for Headstrong because then you won't be able to combine because you won't have all 5 pieces of Superion, and vice versa. Metroplex also won't be able to because he is already 25 stars, so there's no, and then the character cards under him don't count as stars, so you won't be able to swap out one of those for another 4-star character. And then of course again the combiner teams as well, like this the Dinobot deck or any of them, you know, again they won't be able to kind of said that twice, forgive me, but they won't be able to swap out cards unless they don't plan on combining. If you want to swap out and sacrifice combining for you know, like Warpath or Acid Storm or whoever else is relevant that'll you know, be good in a competitive environment, you can do so. But you know, if you take out one of your character cards for another character or whatever that throws off the combining, then obviously you would side out your Enigmas as well. Now I'm not saying that's viable, but that is an option. Alright, so in this segment of the video, I just wanted to touch on a couple of cards that we don't have yet because the set hasn't been released from the War of Cybertron Siege 1, Part 1. But cards like Battering Ram, if you're playing a truck deck and you know you're playing against a combiner team, you can play Battering Ram, and when they, you know, have their characters flipped, when you're able to attack them while they're still on the field, you may flip them to their other mode. So you can really set your opponent back by just equipping this and, you know, flipping their characters. So that could possibly be relevant if trucks become relevant, or if you just play Optimus and you put it on him as a truck and then you flip him to you know, Battlefield Legend to the other mode. That could be very strong in terms of setting back a combiner team. So that's a possible good side deck card. Then we also have Dampening Field. Dampening Field is a card I immediately thought that would be good for side decks. You could easily, of course, just trade this for a green icon card if you're playing against a deck that doesn't flip more than 4 battle cards. But immediately I think of cars and especially Insecticons. So you can't trigger this exactly when you want. So let's say they have 2 attacks on your bots. If they attack with Chop Shop first, they, you know, you have to flip the Dampening Field then and there, because when one of your characters defends. So as soon as one of your characters start to defend, you have to flip Dampening Field then in order to defend. Now, ideally, you want to flip it on, use it on Kickback, Barrage, or well, Barrage to a lesser extent, but Barrage or Wheeljack. Let's say your opponent puts a Power Punch and a Supercharge on Wheeljack and give their Wheeljack Bold 9 because they have a weapon engraved. Well, when they go to, let's, you know, and that was their only untapped bot, and then you know that's going to happen, so you set the Dampening Field. They attack with their Wheeljack, you know, after putting the Power Punch and Supercharge on, and then you flip Dampening Field to trap them, and then now they can only flip 4 cards. So they'll flip 2 initially and then 2 more, and then even if they flip a white, they will not flip anymore. So that's just wasted action and upgrade from them, and the Wheeljack can possibly get at most, you know, maybe 9 or 10, depending on how many, you know, oranges they flip. So I think a card like this will be very good for the side deck, you know, against Insecticons. Kickback, excuse me. Kickback will only be able to flip 4 cards, you know, instead of the 8 minimum that he normally flips, and again, including any whites, you know, he won't flip as well. And same with Barrage. Now, Barrage, I say to a lesser extent, because if he has bold two from attacking a damaged character, they have to flip a white in order to flip 2 more, and if they don't, then they'll only be flipping 4. So I mean, it all depends on, you know, just how the flips go, but those are a couple of relevant things. And then my favorite card, my favorite card to talk about side decking, and I think honestly it's my favorite card in the entire set so far, is Infiltrate. Infiltrate says reveal when your opponent plays an orange action, and when you reveal it, you scrap that action and it has no effect. So it just straight up negates their orange action, and you're able to side deck that, not even necessarily just in blue decks, because, you know, it is a blue icon card, but you can side deck this even in you know, aggressive decks. You know, I can side deck this in my Sentinels against, you know, bugs. It'll really help out the bug matchup when they play Reckless Charge, when they play Treasure Hunt or anything like that. I can just negate it. Now, one thing to counter that, and I talked about this with Wads, my boy Mike Wads, that I play with at my local store, and on his channel, I talked about some tricks of the trade with Infiltrate. Now, the thing about Infiltrate you got to realize is, now it's important to check your opponent's graveyard. Before, I mean, most players that I've played, they never look in my graveyard for the, or excuse me, scrapyard, graveyard, and the reason why I say you have to start looking at their graveyard is because if you see an Infiltrate already in the scrap pile through the variance of flipping, when they go to set a secret action, that's something to pay attention to, because you can easily play around it by either activating a non-icon card like One Shall Stand or I Still Function, activating a white, anything that's not orange, or you can just simply not activate an action that turn. If you have a handful of orange actions, if it's not dire that you have to activate one, I wouldn't, because at the end of the turn the secret action gets scrapped. So thank goodness it doesn't just stay there until you happen to flip it, or excuse me, you happen to trip and trigger it. So that's very relevant and something to pay attention to. Look through their scrap pile and start looking and through, because I think we're only getting about 8 secret actions. So get familiar with all the secret actions. And I'm speaking on if you're, talking about if you're in terms of going to sanctioned events, because I know it's something I'll definitely be doing. Look through their scrap yard, see what secret actions they do have in their scrap yard, and then that'll give you an idea when they do set one on the turn that they set it. It's like, okay, well, why did he set that? What could it be? If they only have, possibly one other secret, if half their deck is in the grave and there's only one secret action, there's a high chance that the secret action they have set is the same one like they have in their grave. So if they have Infiltrate in their graveyard, there's a high chance that it's Infiltrate. So it's just something to be aware of. It's not 100%, because of course they could have decided in 3 secret actions and 3 of one secret action and then another of another. But yeah, those are just some small details to think about in terms of competitive play and being aware of what your opponent has. And another card you can side deck is the latest action card revealed by WOTC, Heat of Battle. Now, in the Heat of Battle, you can main deck it, no problem. But if you're playing against a blue heavy deck like area bots, you definitely want to activate that card. So yes, you could just simply trade it in for a green icon card and then game 2 side it out, because you'll never activate it, because of course you having bold 3 and them having tough 3 is kind of, that's not ideal. But you could also side deck 3 of these cards, and then you can easily put this in versus other, this card is clearly made for orange decks. So I could easily side deck 3 of these in versus another orange deck, because of course their orange deck doesn't play any blue, or little to no blue. So a tough 3 doesn't really help them. All that does is they they flip 5 cards minimum, and then they were more than they were expecting. All right, so I think that's all I have to say about this notion of the game side decking, and I'm so glad it's been added finally. It's very interesting to be able to side deck characters, so it'll be interesting to see what people do in terms of taking out a 7-star character for a 5-star character or a 4-star character now, and then adding in 3 star cards now, because those star cards help against that matchup, or whatever they were trying to do. As we get more cards in the game, this only gets better, and it only gets more trickier in terms of side decking and the cards that you main deck. So I think that's all I had to cover right now, and I appreciate you being here if you got to this point in the video. And with that being said, I am going to go eat because I am hungry. I appreciate you guys being here with me, and if you have any other questions about side decking and you didn't understand anything, or if I talk too fast, let me know. I know I have a tendency to talk too fast, and I'm trying to work on it, and I know I probably say that every other couple of videos, and I still do it anyway, but I'm actively thinking about it, and I want to get better with my commentating and my videos and all that good stuff. So with that being said, I will catch you guys in my next video. I'm again very excited for organized play. Hope you guys are too. The Origins Game Fair will be the first event coming up in 2 weeks. That's very soon, so if you can go to that, good luck to you. And yeah, that's about it. So with that, I'm gonna head out. You guys have a great night. As Dr. Kuma's out. Peace.